So I might just kick it off because it feels about right. If people want to straggle in later, they can. I usually like a classroom setup, so when they come in, I can sort of heckle them and, oh, look, here they come in the back. It's a bit harder on here. And by the way, I did get heckled in a physical class once before. This lady at the back was quite right. I said, oh, look, we've only got an hour, which I'm going to say to you all again, the same. We've only got an hour, and I'll try to jam in probably too much. And then I'm on about these anecdotes like, oh, there's this one great, I want to tell you about Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. The greatest book that I ever read, and you should read it as well. Da, da, da. She heckled me at the back. She said, get on with it. And I thought, oh, the nerve, but she was right. So feel free to heckle anytime you want to, especially regarding the jokes, because so far, what did the zero say to the eight? I don't think has gone so well. So let me get into presentation mode here, and so that's good. And share screen. Let's just have a look at that. Okay, so how's that going? You guys seeing anything? That's the wrong way around, is it? Or is that fine?
No, it's all good, mate.
What are you getting?
9 conversational tricks.
Great. So I went with a weak joke because when you asked me that question, I thought, oh no, my first slide is fantastic. So have a look through the session. If there's nothing else you take away from today, it's some of this cool and laid back conversational techniques that I stole from the internet. My favorite is Oak Nuggins. It's the first one, just Oak Nuggins, call people Oak Nuggins, whatever. So just have a look, pick out your favorite, throw it in along the way. And I probably still won't know what you're saying because I'm not an expert in these, but I just think take this away. It's fantastic. Some of them sound rude, but they're not. Do you play golf? So, feel free to work that into your own conversation. So is everyone on mute? I'm expecting roars of laughter. No, we're all just, okay, that's great. We're laughing on the inside where it counts. Okay, that's good. Let's get into it then. How do I do this? Okay. So given I prefer physical, I've kind of got my cards and I'd like to be able to draw pictures, but I've taken photos and I've put a few things in here, and there's a few other artifacts with detail that I've put in here as well. So, so you'll be able to read those, but I'll probably leaf through them over here as well. Overview and about me. So today really is, I found out that I'm along the way that I'm less a designer and innovator and I do that stuff for clients, but I'm more of a consultant really. And I feel like my journey to where I am now, which is head of the innovation and design consulting practice in Telstra Purple, is really about building capability and building people to be great consultants. We can go and take those skills around innovation and design and they're kind of like quite discreet and quite nice, and on the client side they can be the same, but there's something else you need to be good at. There's something else about taking people on journeys, and I'm really interested in that, and that's mainly what I want to talk about today. So a quick history. I accidentally did a great apprenticeship, and I call it that. It's not really an apprenticeship, but I call it that, in being a modern and progressive and amazing lover of humanity when I went to ThoughtWorks. And I don't know if you've heard of ThoughtWorks. It's a tech firm, consulting firm, sort of really early on pioneer in the agile space. Those guys are owned by a socialist from the 60s, a Black Panther, in fact. And so we learned so much there, and that was great. And just throwing that in there, I think everyone should do an accidental apprenticeship in being a great human. And then I've moved on to Redify, and that's again a tech firm building the innovation and design practice, and now in Telstra Purple, same story. So that's kind of my thing. Going back a lot further, and I will talk about one of my role transitions that you might be interested in from more of a digital agency into the ThoughtWorks consulting firm, and there's an interesting story there. But before that, it was kind of digital agencies, and before that, marketing. And I kind of got sick of the jock boy kind of attitude around advertising and marketing, and that's not really for me. So I've drifted closer to tech, and I'm not really an IT guy, but I do the hand waving. I'm interested in design and solving human problems, and so that's how product became a thing, and we'll get to that. Also, how will we work? Great. I can't monitor you. I can't sort of keep an eye on the naughty kids at the back who are who are mucking around with their things, but salespeople in particular in my organization often like to tap away at emails and things like that. If we can not do devices, that'd be great. I'd like to have that connection as much as possible and interject. And maybe you don't put your hand up, just sort of call out at me. Hey, Mike, you jerk, stop talking, or I need something or whatever. And we'll care for each other and we'll tell lovely stories, and that's the heart at the end. And let's everyone contribute if you have something. That's kind of how I'm thinking about today. So what is this session? I've put a hypothesis together for what this is. And we talk about hypotheses in our innovation work and in our product work, in design. And I think it's good to call it out. My hypothesis is by providing a free class, engagement in this way, you can see whether I'm likable, whether I've got credible stories, whether I can deliver and help you learn something, all of those things. I believe that we will reduce the perceived risk associated with committing to paid courses. And I don't want to make this about me and about courses, but this is kind of the framework, right? Think about yourself as a product. How are you framing hypotheses in what you do? And I'll know I'm successful when I get probably higher levels of engagement off the back of this with you guys, and ideally a demonstrable conversion rate that tracks from here to the paid courses. And that's not pressure, although I will mention the gift shop at the end. But it's just to say, hey, I'm thinking about product hypothesis, Mike hypothesis, my life hypothesis, and then you can reflect on whether it's working or not. This is a bit of a format for what we're going to do today. So I've already used up 10 minutes, but first half an hour is talking about P product, just in a nutshell, within the context of the this conversation, which is largely about how we're going to apply it to ourselves. But what is product kind of thing, and including a bit of a Q&A. I'm getting a rustling if someone can mute, but that's fine. And Q&A. So that doesn't mean don't jump in any time though, but it's just I'll leave a little bit of a space to open that up if you want to ask questions. Second half is hiring. Could have called it interviewing, whatever, but it's hiring, and that's kind of what we're here for. I've named the session how to get a job in consulting by understanding product. There's a lot of moving parts there. It's not necessarily I'm unemployed and I need a job per se, how to interview well. It's more how to, in the longer journey, think about framing who you are and what you do. You might have a role that's close, but you want to tweak it a bit, or you might be in-house in product or in-house in design or tech and want to become a consultant. I think that's kind of the path that we're talking about. Although if you're currently looking for a role, there's some stuff you could probably do immediately, which is really cool. As aforementioned, the product bit. So product management in a nutshell, I'm going to talk about product management through a couple of lenses. There's building the product, the shiny thing. That's the processes that we understand and love. How do we build something? And we could be doing that as an in-house team or a startup or whatever. The middle one there is more about using the product mindset to apply to us as a professional services firm. And most of my stories are from that angle. Most of my career has been on the agency or professional services and strategy side. And so the really product becomes about that interaction and that exchange of value as a service provider, which is slightly different to building a thing. And then at the end, how do we think of ourselves as a product as well? And so there's little snippets of each of those, but they're quite distinct lenses, I think. Oh, by the way, I've just referred back at the naysaying about Zen. Come on. Who on earth said, I'm surprised everyone recommends that book. I can't get into it. You know what? I forced a guy to read it. He got 75% of the way in and texted me the whole way. I can't stand it. He really put in a good effort and finished it and still hated it. So I understand. Okay. But I will plug it again before the end of the show. And I just wanted to throw this Venn diagram that everyone uses and loves, oh, what's product? Oh, well, it's the business, tech and design coming together. It's the middle of that Venn diagram. Or it's the desirable, feasible, viable, that's great. What's at the middle? Oh, it's product, or it's service design, or it's UX, or it's innovation, or any other thing. And that's interesting, but it's really only a starting place. What I'm really thinking about is, well, what's next? after you know, say that there's an overlap, okay, what's at the intersections, or which risk are we managing? Is it technical risk or business risk or design risk, or any of these things? What does this really tell us? There's also, let me just check what's on the next thing. There's also another lens to that, and I'm not sure if I get to it later. I don't think so. When I think about the work that we do, when we think about the product itself, I use music analogies a lot. So I think, okay, you're like a conductor, right? So you're cool. You're like a conductor, and you've got to get the business humming along and working, and tech working, and design working together to come up with a meaningful product. And that's true. But early on in the career, are you the conductor, or are you playing in the band? You know, so in the orchestra. And where does the sheet music come from? So I'm going to jump to my music analogy a bit later, and I'll talk a little bit about sheet music. Essentially, more junior burgers, you want to have sheet music so you can learn the skills. And later on, the analogy changes. The aspect of running a team as opposed to building a product. So you're thinking about the product explicitly through this Venn diagram. But then when you're later thinking, how do I run, support, grow a team? I think more of a jazz metaphor, and so there's a lot more flow going on. You're able to bring to bear the right skills at the right time. That expertise that you embody becomes more of a jazz metaphor. And in my classes, I go on more about that, and we can talk about it more now if you want to as well. But I thought I'd throw in, there's different metaphors that work there, and I think orchestra versus jazz is a good conversation to have. So everyone's heard of business model canvas. I'm going to assume yes, it's been around forever, and anyone in the industry has kind of been involved with that. But if you haven't, it's basically very simple canvas template where you can map out sort of, there's 8 or 10 or whatever it is, quadrants. What's your proposition? Who are your customers? How do we make money? And you can articulate your business model onto a really easy to understand format, but it's easy to edit and review, and it's a working document, which is really nice, the point of the business model canvas. And you can point to risks and how do I manage those, which is really great too. But when we think of ourselves as a product, what I've developed is a professional development coaching canvas. So it's basically sort of a bit of personal branding and a bit of business model canvas brought together into one canvas that helps you map out, okay, who am I? What's the market? What's the meaningful overlaps? Where are the gaps, and what do I need to invest in? And so I think that's a really useful tool. I've got it here, and you'll get these slides, so don't worry about taking notes or whatever. And I'm happy to speak at length later or in the Q&A about the canvas as well, because it maps really nicely into the GROW model, which is a known and well understood coaching model. We've kind of connected it up so that when you're coaching, you can use this thing, this structure. This is it here. And it's evolving all the time. I've got, this is sort of the latest version. And I won't go into all the details, but I think it's worth sitting down and spending a couple of hours on reflecting on who you are and where you want to go. It's a nice strategic piece, but you're kind of bringing to bear all the good elements of product or service design to apply to yourself, especially if you want to be a consultant. Cool. Here's another thing. I was going to talk about doing side projects and such, and I thought, well, why is that interesting? And the way I think about that is when you're in your current role, and there's sort of like maybe the fit for you is starting to reduce. I think of that as similar to the McKinsey Horizons model, and Michael, you'll interject because you're deep strategy guy, I guess, compared to me, and tell me where I'm explaining it wrong. But essentially, the McKinsey Horizons model says that we should be focusing about 70% of our attention and efforts on Horizon 1, which is things that are making money today, about 20% on Horizon 2, which is things that will transition into the now in the short term, maybe a couple of years. And then Horizon 3 is further out. It's more radical stuff. The way I think about applying product to myself is like this. I've got a day job, or I've got a thing happening, I'm making money, or I'm getting by one way, but the alignment to who I want to be is reducing in that. So what I need to do is invest in Horizon 2 and Horizon 3 side projects. And I know people talk about hustle and all of that. I don't think of it as I'm hustling and I'm going to have this startup that goes into an IPO. I think that's ridiculous. The way I think about it is craft opportunities to structure ways where you can build skills and get runs on the board and stories to tell about the things you really want to do rather than the thing you're currently doing. And so you build those and they sort of come into the mainstay. They go from Horizon 3 to Horizon 2 to Horizon 1. And then the idea over time is your main focus is a collection of all of those things. Some examples are, if you're, in my case, the way it went was I was sort of in mainstream marketing. So I did a little bit more of an advertising type study on the side, learned a bit more of the creative techniques, and then moved into an advertising agency. Still broad, so how do I narrow down? I spent a lot of my time working on more digital products and thinking about product as opposed to advertising. And so then being able to move into product was an easy thing to do. And now the more recent one is I've diverted my attention away from solving design and innovation problems to consulting problems for people who want to be consultants, right? So I've really narrowed it down. And so I'm spending my time doing this stuff. How do I help others become a great consultant so that I can spend all of my time on that in the future? Does that kind of make sense? Just nods or questions? Yeah, cool. I'm only getting a few on the screen down here, so just call out in case I'm missing anyone or not giving attention where I need to. And so then this is a scungy. I don't know how you guys keep ideas, but I've got a Google folder in photos with just scraps of stuff from everywhere. And this one came to mind when I was thinking about this. So how do you do those scrappy side projects? Well, you need to find things that are in line with what you want to do. But the most important thing is don't go telling people about what you want to do. Don't go asking for opportunities. Don't go explaining your thing by doing detail, therefore main point. Boring. What you want to do is think about the main point, because, and detail. Go the other way around. Investors prefer and clients prefer. The language here is interesting. So technical experts inside a consulting firm, as in I'll use developers as a patsy. They're great people, but I'm going to chuck them under the bus a little bit. They'll talk a lot about detail, therefore main point. Clients don't care, do not care. Clients want a main point, as investors do, because, and maybe we'll get to the detail, maybe not. If they trust you, we'll just go with it. And another way to explain that is your product, yourself, needs a punchline. Others would probably describe that as a proposition or your niche, and that's fine. But I think when you say punchline, it brings about all of that great stuff that happens in stand-up comedy. You need a build-up, you need tension, and you need to smash it home with your punchline. And you kind of need to open with it. Another way to describe that is what I do, which is I'm a bit of a fame whore, so here's a photo of me. But what I've been doing is reading poetry, reading Dr. Seuss in my work to clients and to others, just to say, hey, there's another way to reflect on who you are as a consultant and as an innovator. Poetry is a way to do that. Here's what I want to be known for. And I don't say that part, but I just tell them a joke, so to speak. The punchline is this poetry that hits them. And they don't know what's happening, but they experience it. So in your case, tell a joke or go and actually run a project. What I'm, not to be a startup, but if you want to now expand into, say, let's say AR, VR, right? The devices are expensive, but there are ways to deal with that. Go and do a project and have something to show. And it doesn't have to be successful necessarily, commercially or otherwise, but you do need to be able to tell the rich story out of the back of that. And I think that's the meaningful part of going and getting these extra side gigs. So jumping forward, I'll talk a bit more. So I'll talk a bit more about the things to do relating to side gigs and interviews later. But I'm just going to talk about my record collection for a bit. And I do have actual records down here, but I'm actually now talking about professional services offerings. So back where we were talking about the different types of product management through different lenses, there's building the shiny thing. That's sort of your innovation and product classic. Then on the other side, we've got the human stuff, the heart about yourself. And we just talked about that a bit. In the middle, I've got what is product as a professional services firm where we do stuff in exchange for cash. Okay. That's kind of what I want to talk about now with my records. And here's my favorite record. And by the way, I might start jumping around a bit. This is my a record that I've created. It's kind of a prototype, a prop really. Like it doesn't have anything on it. I think it's some sort of acid house track or something from the 80s. So this is called Purple. Alignment by Design. It's a consulting offering, and I've packaged up our consulting work not into this confusing, endless array of design and innovation or product services, activities, but I've wrapped it up into something that solves a consulting problem for the client and for us as a firm. This is about the quote that I call out for this one is when you want to get the stakeholder party started, right? So you want to get client, our stakeholders, all the different stakeholders and executives into the room. What the hell is this thing that we're going to do? And so I've wrapped it up into like an album. And so internally in our business and for clients, it helps focus on a specific thing. It talks about what are the outcomes. It also helps to inspire in more of a rich and emotive way, rather than saying, well, we're going to do the 3-point, blah, blah, blah. It's a bit more inspiring than that. My two favorite tracks from this album are called Campfire Love and Customers Are Not Sausages. So, I mean, what's not to love when that's the thing? And I'll do a Molly Meldrum. Do yourself a favor, check this out. Go out and get it. If you've got any questions, jump those in now if you like. I'll just go through a couple of examples. Here's the same one again. I've got it in artwork to sell the same story. I can't carry that around everywhere. We do things like vision, definition, metrics exploration, talk about ways of working, human-centered consulting, blah, blah, blah. It's short, but it's about how do we journey together? And I'll talk about that in a little bit. How do we journey together before we think about how do we build a product? Which I think is back to, okay, fine, the Zen haters are not going to appreciate this, but it's back to Zen, right? How do we journey together on a 15-day motorbike trip across the country? Not quite. And there are others. So this one's a strategy one. And the way I think about that is ensuring your investments align to your strategy through jazz. Okay. That's kind of a sexy way to describe it. And for my teams, they can see what that is. They can feel what that means. And then I ask them maybe to do their own version for their squad or their team. And it's really a really great way to productize in a positive way what is otherwise just nebulous, endless services and a team that maybe doesn't have a clear definition. There's some others. I've got experience definition and this one here, which is pretty big actually, this one, transformation of the whole organization, to be honest. Let's carry on. How are we going for time? 6:26, could be okay. Two of the squads that I've been working with and by the way, it's not the Spotify squads. We've used the term, but we've got a different structure. Okay, big deal, not that important. We were working on, okay, well, who are you guys? There's two squads here in New South Wales. What's the difference between you and you? And on the left, this team came up with this. They said, we are called Cumulus because they do a lot of cloud computing stuff. And they said, we're a soul album because we really care about what we're doing. It's not about numbers or process. We're really passionate. And the other thing that they said was, we're a compilation album. So there's a lot of different things that we bring together. So the metaphors that you ask to be used often bring out all of this great texture and information that you wouldn't have otherwise noticed. Works for product vision, but works for setting a vision and shaping things in a professional services setting as well. So I'm kind of borrowing from all, but with the goal of you're in consulting, which is PS, professional services. Band of Legends, those guys, they think they're good. They are pretty good, but they think they're good. So we're the Band of Legends. I thought they didn't have as good a philosophy around the album name and so forth, but their track names were pretty cool. Some of it, Elephant in the Room I like because they're comfortable to call out whatever problems there are with clients, and they're comfortable to deal with those issues. And Symphony in C is such a tech nerds joke, it's coding in C, it's just hilarious. Those were pretty successful at getting the teams to reflect and have something to aim at. Let's see what we do next. Okay, I think we're at Q&A for the first section, and we're at about 6:30, so that's good. How's everyone feeling?
Good, Mike. That's great. I've got a quick question just about how you're sort of packaging and bundling up those different sort of record label offerings. Is that something that you put as being sort of client facing? Is that how you're branding some of your packaged services?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're we're a services arm of a massive organization, Telstra, right? And so there's a lot of education for sales and for other teams, and I show them and go on about the record stuff in that context. With clients, I tone it down a little bit and I'll say, hey, we've got this alignment by design thing. This is our album, and I might use some of the iconography, the visuals, but you need to get to the point a little bit quicker and a little bit less on the emotive stuff.
Yeah.
Although it comes out as an exercise with clients, right? If we're building a team, useful. If we're putting together a product vision, useful. So there's kind of a couple of different audiences there. Yeah.
So your main audience at the moment is an internal audience. So you're selling your services internally?
No. So yeah, that's a good question as well, and it comes up all the time. Telstra don't know what to do about telcos. Well, they do know, but it's like, well, the telco party's over. What are we going to do now? So they bought bunch of tech companies and a bunch of consulting firms, and we're this thing on the side that's kind of the future. So what the selling internally is so that the rest of the organization can understand who and what we do and help and work with us to then work with our collective clients. So we're still client facing 100%. But there's an internal sell. It's basically like educating the sales team is kind of what we're talking about. Yeah. Fernando, do you like the music analogies?
Yeah, very cool. And it rings a bell, yeah. And I've been through a business canvas as well with you before, I think, which is quite helpful because I just saw it like, I know that canvas, and I think we did it a couple of times. And
yeah, we did that, and we're doing a coaching series, and I hope that was useful.
Very, yeah.
Great, that's good to hear. I mean, what are you going to say? I'm kind of forcing you to say something nice, but anyway.
Hey, I've got a comment. I haven't seen that McKinsey horizon diagram before, but that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff behind that on why it works and how to implement, but I kind of boil it down to something maybe a little bit too simple. But yeah, getting our clients to think about it that way, a bit harder sometimes if they're not structured that way, because it comes back to silos and annual budgeting and these sorts of things that you need to unpack and deal with. But at a personal level, which is what this conversation is about, yes, okay, Friday afternoons for 2 hours, I'm blog writing. Like that's what it is. That's my future, or whatever the case I want to do. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, you explained it well, briefly, but explained it well. So thanks.
Okay, that's good feedback. We could go off the rails in the second half, but call out if need be. Cool. So I'll carry on. Yeah, everyone good? Okay. We're going to do the activity. Surprise, surprise. So I'd like everyone to just we'll spend sort of 5 minutes. We don't have a long amount of time, and this is supposed to be a talk, but it gets boring, right? So remember the thing we just talked about, the albums. That's my offering, top left. On the right is, I've subjected myself to this same exercise, and I said, well, what's my headline? What's my genre? What's my number one hit? And what's my hidden gem about myself? And that's kind of, you wouldn't see that on an album, but what's the album artwork as well? And so I created that one. This is kind of Mike in a nutshell. Something always happens. I've got the confidence that the scribble will happen, but some certainty will come. And I like to think of it as epistemological voyage. That's my number one hit, which means, the exploring, what do we know? What do we not know? What should we know? That kind of stuff. And good at sensing things sometimes a bit too early. It's like a spidey sense thing. So sometimes that's frustrating because connecting it to action is a thing. So I call out my weaknesses in there as well, but that's two sides to every coin, right? And then at the bottom, we talked about those ones. So if you guys, can we set, say 5 minutes, just have a go, scribble it on a Post-it note if you've got one handy, or do it in whatever you've got. Like, I'm really easy to do, but what it would mean is sharing it back with us, at least verbally. Is that okay with everyone? Does that sound like something we can do, like fun?
It's good.
I'm seeing sketching. Yep, good. Maybe sketching is the easiest because you can just hold it to the camera rather than doing all the sharing of screen, which is good. How's everyone going? Let me know in the chat or yell out when you feel finished.
I'm good when everyone else is.
You're good? Yeah. Okay, yeah, we've got another done. Yeah. I think SJ is just lurking today and I'm not sure if I'm going to get a share from Wharton and others. In that case, what we might do is turn off the hokey music and just hear from those that are done. So I'm just going with my screen because of the order. Oh, do you know? Oh God, this is embarrassing. Who was first to say they're done?
I can jump in.
Oh yes, jump in, please.
Yeah. I'll show you mine up close. Here you go. So
Oh, nice.
mine's a note. It's called The Spark. It's an electro band.
Nice.
My number one hit is Bring the Vision. I think my background is design and innovation. So thinking about what the sort of future holds. And I think my sort of special hidden gem there is see the possibilities and imagine a better future. So it's all about sort of going in and saying, well, what could that future be like, and trying to spark a little bit of magic in the room and get them to think about a bigger and brighter opportunity.
I love it, and it's such a fast drawing as well, which is fantastic. Yeah, cool. Fernando?
I'm still finishing here.
Oh, sorry, I'll do Mike. I'll do Mike. Michael.
All right.
As in me?
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
I know there's only the two of us, so yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Common name. I haven't really done much of a drawing, but if I was to name an album, it would be called Jindalee Factor.
Okay.
And I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but it's a military grade over the horizon radar, which sort of can bend radar and can see things that are coming over the horizon.
Yes.
So the number one hit would be something called Unexpected Threats. And my hidden gem would be called Unlimited Opportunities.
Ah, I love it. I started listening to, I'm going to do a side thing and you can tell me to get on with it. I stumbled across this great podcast about these military guys talking about military design, like third generation or something. What do they call it? Second generation military design. And it's called Over the Horizon. I'll share it with you guys. You've probably seen that, Michael, have you?
Possibly. I spend a fair bit of time looking at that kind of stuff. I got fascinated with the Jindalee Factor like 20 years ago.
Wow. I was fascinated to hear everything these guys, and I thought military, they're not going to speak my language. Everything they said was design language applied at a very high level strategic context. And man, I'm with you. That's exciting, an exciting place. Yeah.
The stuff, I'll send you some links later. I won't take up time now, but some of the stuff that they're that I've been reading lately around the planning for war games will blow your mind, and some of it's publicly available.
Oh, I'm down. Okay, great. Let's do it. All right, Fernando. That's as exciting as that was. I can't do any more awkward chat. So what have you got?
No, that's very good. Well, I don't have like fancy drawing or something, but well, it would be called Keep It Spinning.
Keep It Spinning.
Yeah, progressive house genre.
Yes, yes, progressive house, of course. Yep.
So the track would be pause, breathe, cry if you must, but keep going.
Okay, I like it. Yeah.
And the hidden gem is I'll be there for you.
Oh, so good. And different angles. I love it. And you're straight into the musical theme with me. So that's really cool. Look, so I don't know what you might take away from that, but sorry, is anyone else going to share? I just haven't had a chat or a conversation from RA or Wharton or SJ. I'm going to assume it's a no, but jump in now if you do want to share anything. I think they're just sort of lurking and soaking up the fun here. Backbenchers, I suppose. Okay. You're welcome to jump in anytime and show us or ask a question as well. So yeah, I find that really useful, and it looks like I get a bit too excited about musical analogies, and I kind of do, but I think it's useful. Engaging people in a context where what we're selling is imaginary, making it really tangible really helps. And I just find it interesting as well. I wonder how useful that is to reflect on your own identity, and then as a team, what would happen if you did an identity piece around what's our genre, what's our band sound, which album are we doing now, which album are we doing in 18 months, what kind of albums do we do? Those kind of questions are great in a team environment as well. Okay, 6:43. I need to close this thing off. Okay, interviewing. I'm just going to talk from my perspective, what I'm looking for when people come in, what I think has worked for me, maybe. Not that my journey is the only journey, but it's something. So that's kind of the nature of what I'll talk about. I guess I'll just run through here what I'm looking for, going through the joining ThoughtWorks and then interviewing people coming in ThoughtWorks, same in Redify and same in Purple. That's where my stories are coming from. So what I might do is just talk a little bit about that. And I've got some notes here. Sorry, so the way we interview, and this is helpful in that how to think about preparing, especially if you come from a design background. A portfolio, I personally find not that useful when we're getting into consulting, because the value of what you are now expected to do is so abstract. It's not the visual design, it's not the layouts or any of that stuff. And so what I would suggest is bringing in the stories of what happened, and is there a way to document those? Probably. I'll talk about that in a sec. And then the interviewing, we've commonly in all of these scenarios, I've used sort of activity and scenario-based interviewing, in particular for designers coming in who have strong design skills, but then we need to see how strong they are in consulting. We'll give them a scenario that's more about business analysis or more about a weird situation with the client, and they need to use their skills in a more abstract way about people management and political negotiation and all of those sorts of things, and see what they can bring to bear. That's really what's of interest. And so I think if you're trying to transition, you need to be thinking about all of the things that aren't the technical skill set. And I don't mean technical as in code, I mean the technical skill sets of design or the technical skill sets of even product. It's more the people and the broader stuff. So that's the bit that'll trip you up, and that's what I'm looking for. If I did a short list, what I'm looking for is probably more someone that's been frontline in that environment where they can manage pressure and they can manage customer. I think McDonald's is a really simple example. It's probably oversimplifying it, as opposed to someone who likes to stay in the back room and tinker with the things and isn't really the person that comes out and is able to work with people and guide the client on sort of like a Sherpa for the client on their path, those kind of things. I want someone who can bullshit in a good way. I don't mean lie. I mean someone who can understand that there's two sets of books here. People need to hear certain things to help them. We can't be completely honest all the time. There are developers in my team who go into engagements and are like, wow, your stack sucks. You guys are shit. And that's just, it's true, but you don't say it. So you need to, what I'm talking about is a high level of emotional intelligence, but that's demonstrated more in agency or client-facing situations, even any kind of customer service, because you're going to have idiots on the phone, so that's a skill that I look for. And there's two things that I'll talk about specifically after this as well. Why is it in that order? Yeah, okay. It might be a little bit out of order, but we'll see how we go. So in preparing for this, I don't know if you saw my social media post a few days ago, but in preparing for this, I've been collecting notes from bits and pieces and that Google image from wherever it came. And this was in a box. I was doing something else and I found this old thing. It's from about 7 or 8 years ago. And the head of design at ThoughtWorks asked me what constitutes a satisfying project to take a role there. And this is my response. And I think this document made a big difference in articulating my attitude as a consultant versus being a designer in the technical sense. And to be honest, if you look at my visual design work, I'm not really a designer. Like, it's pretty gross. Not that everyone has to be good at visual design, but so I talked a bit about what constitutes a satisfying project, and that was impressive, apparently. And it's not really about methodology. It's more about getting solutions, and we know all of these things, but that's describing consulting, right? And then I went a bit further and listed out some examples, and there's this big table, which I'm not going to show you all of the details, but essentially there's this big table that says, okay, I did all these projects, and what were the stages that are of interest to the question? And why am I showing you this? Because I thought, okay, what this is illustrating is something that I have sort of dawned on me more recently, which is a good consultant will drift to where the biggest risk is. So the question is, Mike, you want to be a designer here. Tell me what's a satisfying project. And I said something at the top. But down the bottom here, I was able to, or I was prepared to, or I think about it in such a way that design is kind of here, but what happened before that? What was all this meaningful stuff before? And what was all this meaningful stuff afterward? And then when I put my consulting hat on, I'm saying, well, there's all these design risks and so forth around solving the problem for the client. But what about the consulting risk or other risks associated? Does this client actually need me to go upstream or downstream from here? And I think that's kind of what's embedded in this. I didn't call it out explicitly at the time, but I feel like looking back, that's actually what's been really meaningful in understanding my role at each of these stages. And I think you could do well to do the same thing. It's not always going upstream, right? Everyone wants to go, and we do this in our firm a little bit. Client comes with requirements, okay? We need you to do blah. And we're like, really? You know, we're the experts. Let's have a chat about it and make sure you know what you're talking about. Now, oftentimes they don't, but that's a pretty arrogant attitude. And so for us to say, we always want to go upstream and, you know, sort of up and to the left and get closer to the problem and, you know, up the clock face, which is kind of a partnership and sales question, and to better executives. And that's a good thing for us because we'll have longer, deeper relationships and make more money and all of that. But it's not always what the client needs. Maybe they legitimately know what they need and you just need to get the shit done, right? And I'm just saying drift, but don't be a jerk at the same time. And then if we think, okay, let's say we're really, we're all over innovation and design and product as a technical skill. Tick. We know how to move up and down this spectrum and others, whatever, however you might think about it. What's really going on in a firm? Well, it's not these risks at all. The biggest risk is actually something else, says me. There are three that I think about. The risks I'm managing are, one, can we or do we want to journey together with this client and these individuals? And I want to get that right before I even move to the second one. Now, for us to be qualified in, or for the client to qualify, for us to qualify the client into a deal, we kind of need a half tick on all three of these, but it's ballpark, right? Then you want to drill right in on, can we journey together? That's the biggest one, if you ask me. Second to that, it's not a long second, but it's still second, is can we solve it or build it? Do we have the technical expertise? Do we have the capability, the prowess, whatever it is to do it? And, you know, some might say that's actually the primary one, not the journeying together. But I think what happens if you've got, let's say we measure it as a percentage, right? We've got 100% capability on delivering the shiny thing, but our ability to, or interest or alignment in journeying together is at about 60%. That's going to be a really bad project. Really, really bad engagement, bad relationship, not good. But go the other way, and we've got really high level of alignment around the journeying together. We like each other, we vibe together, everything just works. And we're at about 75, 80% good on solving it. You know, the technical matter of solving the thing. I think that's going to be a far better outcome because we're working together, we like each other, we want to work together and support each other. And then if you get those two, you know, nailed, especially the first one, the third one is not a thing. But generally my experience is salespeople will want to open the conversation, this is in a larger enterprise, with what's your budget, timeline, and work backwards. And it just sort of breaks our ability to really build relationships and solve problems. So if the first one's cracked, nailed down, timeline and budget are a bit more squishy. Some things have a hard deadline and a hard budget, sure. But if the client is really bought into you, what you do, your vision of journeying together, and there's a tick on can we build it, timeline and budget gets a little bit squishier in my experience. So those, that's kind of how do we do product? How do we bring the mindset of product into consulting? And I've ended up at that off the interview question. But if you're moving into consulting, these are the challenges and these are the framing of risk that we're thinking about, as opposed to only these things. There's almost an intersection. These are things going on, but there's also the other one. So you need to comfortably think about how design can manage these risks in engagements. And by the way, that's what alignment, purple alignment by design, that record I've got is about the journeying one. And once you've got that done, you can move on.
I've got a quick question for you, just on the drift diagram.
Yeah.
Do you find that there's it's a two-part question. One, which backgrounds do you find work well when it comes to being more of a consultant role? Do you find that coming from either of those buckets stronger? And two, if you're coming from the far end of delivery, is it harder for you to journey all the way up and be a consultant in helping to define the problem in the first place when you're so used to being at the tail end?
Generally, yes, that's true. So there's kind of an up and to the left drift, right? With seniority, you drift left. And then if you think of this as sort of a strategy through to delivery spectrum, it's rough, but you kind of get what I'm saying. And so development of a product strategist or designer, if they want to go beyond design, or a consultant, kind of in our world kind of drifts up and to the left. There's no man's land down here, like a junior burger who can handle full-blown strategy in our world, or maybe at a Bain or something. And then a very senior visual designer or a delivery person kind of doesn't have a home either. So kind of yes, but it doesn't have to be that way. There's a lot of very senior technical people in our business and in ThoughtWorks as well, as a good example, who very much speak business language as they should, and think about the correct risks, and don't turn it into a delivery or a technical thing at the wrong time. But it's less common. The ideal candidates for quality consulting at a senior level that I'm looking for come from agency, or they come from like probably the worst is government, I'll be honest, because they're internal, they're solving problems, and they've got a government bureaucracy of how things work, and the consulting thing doesn't come naturally, right? They're kind of not able to jazz it on the fly in a commercial sense. Because there's the commercial acumen that's required, there's the emotional intelligence that's required, there's an understanding of how ways of working affect what you're doing as a consultant, separate from delivery. So there's ways of working, agile, lean, and all of that in delivery, but then you need to abstract out those concepts and think about them as a part of your consulting work quite separately. So all of those things, it's more agency. This is why I said McDonald's, and that's an extreme example, like someone who's really good at managing shitty customers. I'd rather, and if they've done some sort of design, innovation, technology training along the way, that would be a good combination, better than someone who feels like they're a bit more deeper senior in the tech and absolutely no ability at managing a difficult situation. That's kind of the way I think about it. Does that sort of answer the question?
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you.
Yeah. I might in future include that drift up and to the left and talk about those spaces. It's probably a useful graphic. Share your holiday snaps. Okay, so we're back in interview land, right? So I'm mostly, that first one was about this one here. You're going in through the front door and you're doing an interview or whatever. Okay, that's fine. The ideal though is building relationships and not having to go through that process cold, which is where those other projects come in that we're talking about, the hustle, the Horizon 3 stuff that might be, telling a joke when you don't have to. You're out in the space doing a startup that doesn't go anywhere, or blogs, or whatever it might be. And another example of that you can carry into the room is sharing your holiday snaps. So what I suggest doing is carry one of these bad boys around. And now for the young kids won't know what this is. I don't have any in here, but this is a photo album. And you can print photographs and put them in this book. And without having to press buttons and fiddle around, you can just sit with someone and have a nice little chat about the stories. Now, what's a holiday photo? What's a holiday snap? Well, when you go on holiday, you take a picture of you standing in front of a thing, and then you come back and tell your friends or your family, oh, yeah, we saw the big, prawn, or whatever it is, the big banana, and or we're at the Gold Coast. By the way, I went there earlier in the year before COVID, and I'd been as a child earlier, and I didn't realize how bogan party town the Gold Coast was. And going as an adult, anyway. So my snaps from the Gold Coast would be, well, here's me going to Ripley's Believe It or Not again, and having a great time in there. Oh, but there's this really interesting story because there was this guy on the street just nearby, and we had a chat about this thing. Oh, and then that's right, we couldn't find anywhere for dinner, so we ended up going to this other place that was expensive and quite crap. But on the second day, we worked out that I Love Italy is actually a really good place, and we went there every day for the rest of the holiday. That's not in the photo, right? But that's the really important story that you need to tell. How all this stuff happened? What happened to you? How did you solve those challenges? How did you feel about it? That I want to hear those stories. I don't care about a resume or a portfolio. I think they're kind of shit. I want to see your holiday snaps. And it's like little postcards that you can send back or whatever. So one example, I should probably practice what I preach and actually finish this this here. I've got a smaller one, but I ought to do a bigger one. Here's a good example. Nothing weird about that. Just one guy taking a photo of another guy in front of a wall, having a good time. You know, that's the holiday snaps that I would take this into any job interview and say, this is Tom. We worked together on this project, and what was really interesting is we got everyone to come through and take photos, and we put their Polaroid on the wall to make it nice and people could visit, and like it's like signing the visitor's book, you know. And we used the colored wool there was to do such and such, and oh, you're not going to believe it. We never got to the end, the bottom row, because we didn't have time. So if I did that again, I would do that project really, really differently. And this was about building capability in what is now purple. So we were capturing everything that existed and articulating how it related to offerings. So there's all, and then we ended up with a at the end like a London tube map, the transportation tube map, as our model of what our capabilities sort of mean and what they are. So that was really cool. So all of that storytelling I can do just from this photo, and it's kind of an engaging photo. It shows, well, we know how to do a wall, whereas maybe in a document, not so much. Vegas Centrelink, thanks for that. Gold Coast is Vegas Centrelink, I love it. By the way, I'm getting private messages through, and then I'm just airing it out. So I hope that's okay with everyone. So let's see what I've got here. That's kind of that story. I think the photo album being physical as well is such a good thing. We're all stuck in digital. Do something different. And then I did the risks, did photo albums. So what could be next for you? I think we'll run over a couple of minutes, but not too badly. What could be next for you? Look, obviously I'm offering product training and so forth for people who want to be consultants. I'm doing that. There are others out there that might suit you better, or other paths as well. But I feel like in a consulting firm, the level of, say, principal consultant is so similar to that of a product mindset or a product manager or strategist, but in a professional services paradigm. Really similar for a designer or a technical person to grow to that level. The skill sets are really similar. Business acumen, managing people, managing a P&L, keeping the team engaged, understanding the craft, all of those things, very, very similar. And so there's probably slightly different paths for the designer or the tech person. And I've also got sales in here. Sales can really do with understanding this mindset, because the records, the conversation we had around the records, and that's helpful. We have separate sessions for sales folk as well. I'll send a reading list. I haven't got it in this document, but I will send everyone a reading list. And I just want to bite back a bit on the Zen thing. So for the Zen haters, here's my Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance book. If you don't love that one, how I came to it, I had it on the shelf ready to go, but didn't read it yet. And then someone, this amazing guy, Matthias from the States, sent me this book with a little inscription saying, hey, Mike, we're talking about stuff, blah, blah, blah. What a nice guy. Sent me this book. It's really similar. It says, anything you want to do and be, you can do it. Like there's nothing stopping you. So Illusions got me into it. Then I said, well, that's like the foray into Zen. Zen is really about that personal path. Some people hate it, sure. Maybe you want something more sciencey. Try Flow. This one's a classic. I think a lot of people have seen it, read it, whatever. How do you say the guy's last name? Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. I've got a Polish friend who told me how to do that by writing different words in my head. So those three flowed really nicely, and it's about managing the inside romantic dialogue with the practical world. Okay, not good enough for you. We've got Tao Te Ching. that's a great book. Check that out. And Alan Watts' Wisdom of Insecurity. All of Alan Watts' recordings from back in the day are now on YouTube. Somehow they were released and they're just all over the place. So Alan Watts, similar Eastern philosophy, go for it. I mean, I'm not just talking about Eastern philosophy here, I've got other things to talk about. If you're really interested in the whole thing about risk, remember the thing about journeying together. The biggest risk in a firm like the one that I work in and the consulting that I like to do is that risk of journeying together. Check out Kurt Vonnegut. This guy is a writer, fiction writer, and he talks about stories, story arcs. There's a bunch of videos which I'll share. He talks about story arcs and how, you know, they're all the same, up, down, happy, you know. And then he also talks about how in the West, we know whether we're up and we know whether we're down, and we know when what a story means. But in some other cultures, there's these great narratives and great stories about history and life and so forth. You don't know whether it's happy or sad. And that's kind of the point. We don't really know until after the fact. So if you want to get really into that journeying stuff and think about story arcs, check out Kurt Vonnegut. And to me, the penny dropped for me when it's like, okay, you don't know at the time, it's after the fact. So then we can go on a whole journey about sense making, which is a separate thing from this class. Q&A if you want to hang around and chat. I'm good. I see I've still got people. I think one person dropped. SJ.
That was great. Thanks, Mike.
Any questions before I've got one last slide?
Not at the moment, but good session. I'm enjoying it.
Okay, that's great. I'd love to stay in contact with everyone, try and get everyone into, I don't know, into a group somewhere. I don't like to force Slack upon everyone. I don't like it myself, but, you know, it'd be good to keep the conversation going. And the, you know, back to my hypothesis, I just want to push you all in the right direction. You know, just exit the show via the gift shop. Come to my workshops, the paid ones. Ask me about coaching, which I do, and I enjoy talking, solving these problems. And I'll share a code with you guys for 30% discount on all of those things, so that if you do want to move forward, that's on offer. And that's really it. Yeah. Next time we'll have a snow dome or something in the gift shop.
That was great, Mike. Thank you. I do have a question though. Probably going a bit deeper, and once you're like doing the consulting role, and it's probably a question I always have had within the consulting business, which is, how do you actually, as a consultant, can you close the gap on solving the problem for the real end customer? I explain myself, like, you have your client, which is probably a corporate or a company, and they're trying to solve this problem, right? Mm-hmm. But how do you know that actually they know what's the problem? Like, have they probably tested their hypothesis with their real customers? Or are you going to try to solve for them a problem that is not going to solve their real problem at the end of the day? Like, I mean, these clients have their own clients. So how do you manage to close that gap? Or is it, I'm assuming part of the job of the consultant is trying to aim to solve the end problem, right?
100%, yeah.
The real one. So how do you close that gap? Because they might be wrong, right? Like, I don't know, I work for a corporate, you could be coaching me through my job here, and I'm like, oh, Mike, I want to solve this, but I have no idea if that's the reality. I haven't checked with my real customers yet. So, so how do you close that?
I don't have all the answers, but I do have a couple of comments there. We've been running some sessions internally around different topics on consulting. So getting tech and design people to go beyond sort of this conversation, but in more depth. And one of the sessions was when to do the bad thing, right? And I like these sensational names, because it's like, okay, we really should be solving a problem for a customer or doing things in a certain way. But if the conditions aren't right, by forcing the issue, we might actually force the customer to either break relationship with us or not get a good outcome in the medium term anyway for themselves. So it's a little bit paternalistic, where we pull back and say, okay, is it okay for us to follow the client in this case so that we can build the trust required to guide them, or get into the trenches with them and steer the situation where we think it needs to go, assuming we know better? in the nuance of the activity, and then getting to know people in the hallway conversations. And it's back to that risk one, the journeying together. Do we want to, would it risk, by pushing that, would it risk the notion of journeying together for that client? And that might be okay. We might say, no, we're really not comfortable, we're going to break ties. Or the client might say, okay, let's investigate together. Or we might just say, no, we're happy to do whatever you like in the short term and build up. Now that's the when to do the bad thing. The other way to deal with this situation is in a very nice way, and you need to word it correctly, because you can word it really badly or word it really well. You want to understand and unpack, how do they know what they think they know, right? You don't want to say, why are you doing it? Why would you do that? It's kind of, it's very emotive to say why an action. But if you can say, well, can you show me the way the organization has come to this notion? What data, what circumstances have led to this? And we'll sort of unpack that. And then we can bring to bear some of our knowledge and expertise around, okay, well, we understand that normally there's a risk here or here or here. Can we just poke that a bit and validate and go and, make sure those numbers make sense and cross-check and sort of let the data speak for itself. The data speaking for itself can be done wrong, though, in that, as I say, some people might walk in and just say, okay, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. It's a very, very delicate thing. But I think you just need to be careful in how you deliver it, but decide first whether you want to go down that path, or are we happy to do the bad thing for the short term? Yeah.
Well, I really like that question, Fernando. I think that's something that I've faced as well. It's the coming in as a consultant or an external party to an organization, and they're having a big problem to solve, and you only having a remit to do something in the middle, and then not being responsible for the delivery and the outcome. So I sort of see that role as to use a musical analogy, coming in to be the conductor, to say, well, guys, I'm a product consultant. This is what I think the right sort of balance of skills and knowledge and data that we're going to need to put together. And this is how we're going to get to the outcome, but it's up to you to get to the outcome. Just sort of laying that path to kind of hopefully bring the orchestra together to sort of make something beautiful.
Quite right. But oftentimes they'll actually just want to pay the rates of and have the notion of like a SWAT team, the jazz player, right? Just come in, do some stuff, and magically everything will be fixed. So many times another thing happens is delivery is a bit broken, and they say, come in and fix product, because product is detached from delivery, and they don't know what, they're not setting the right goals, but actually there's sort of a flow problem that's occurring downstream in delivery. So you're often not engaged by the right person. So I think it's time that we're talking about. So if we think we want to journey with this customer client for a long time, you need to find ways to invest the time and energy without it paying off in the short term. That can be hard when time and materials is the way you price. So pricing becomes a big thing for a firm like ours, so that we can actually invest that time and build the trust, so that 6 months, 18 months down the road, you can have the difficult conversation and say, actually, we think we need to sort of take on a bit more and give us the freedom to do all of this stuff, but you need to take our advice, and when we ask for something, it needs to be done, so to speak. So that can take time to build up. But this is the classic problem. Yep.
Mark, have you ever walked into an organization where you've encountered or going on the journey with them, and you've decided to journey with them, but then realize once you've identified the problem and got into the relationship, that organizationally they're just not structured right, or the problem's higher up, that they just haven't got support at the board level, or
all the time.
Whatever it
That's
is.
everywhere. It's funny, like we're back at the ranch going, oh, you're not going to believe this place, they're broken, like it's war, but we're expensive consultants. We don't go anywhere else. We only go to the places that are a bit broken, right? That's the point of a consultant. Otherwise, if they knew everything, then they'd be fine. But I think it's getting back to asking yourself a couple of questions around that old adage. And I did write an article the other day, my H3 stuff, about the adage of a consultant coming in and telling the client at the time, but we're using their own watch, right? And then that sort of unpacked a bunch of things around, well, do we tell the time differently to them? But the thing that's really been in the back of my mind around that time telling piece is more the political aspect around organizational sort of directorship and middle manager risk around shifting decisions off to a consultant. And so sometimes that's the job. That's your job. And do you want to take that? Okay, sometimes we do want to take that as a job, sometimes we don't. The flip side, that's the bad side. The flip side to that coin is sometimes the organization will only listen to external experts. So Johnny in accounts has been banging on about, annual budgeting for ages. Let's try lean, and no one will listen. Get some consultants to come in at, $8,000 a day. Sure, we'll listen. That's a thing. So or it might be that they want to chuck the consultants under the bus, and and whoever your direct client executive is, gets to live on if things go bad. So the real job at hand isn't like we're saying, oh, the requirements are this, but we want to get to the real problem. That's not even the real problem. Often the real problem is some other thing. And you might not realize that until 18 months into a big project, or 3 months into a project, or whatever. And then you just need to make the best decision at that time. And the way I think about it is structuring our statements of work in such a way that aren't about deliverables, but are about solving problems, and have the flexibility to provide constant feedback and iterate on the goal. So the goal being us helping you solve this problem, whatever that is, political, organizational structure, delivery of a thing, rather than just a list of features. In the software world, a good example is features, for example. Not every client wants that though. So again, you go and do the bad thing for a time, build up the trust and confidence so that you can write a statement of work like that, and then you can get onto the big stuff. Like, it really takes time. Yeah. This is probably your world as well every day, Michael.
I was just thinking through. I mean, what you're saying is absolutely true. One of the things that we do with a customer is, like, if they have defined the scope of work, we will ask a question similar to yourself. But basically we say, outside of the delivery of this scope of work, how will you measure the success of our contribution? So, so let's just assume that we've delivered the scope of work, but how will you measure the success of that? And they'll say, well, improve customer satisfaction, or whatever the heck it is. And then to your point, you say, well, how did you come to the view that this is going to do that? What was the connection? Yeah. And if you start to uncover some gaps there, then that's a meaningful conversation to have. Totally. But I think the other thing is, and not everyone's got the luxury to do this, but qualifying the right customer type for you. Mike, you and I have had chats about the fact that we've got basically 3 criteria for a customer. That is, that they've got a committed leadership team, an aggressive growth target, and a deadline. And we have definitions of that committed leadership team and what that means. And sometimes in the large organizations, they're not going to have that. So, if you've got the choice, that might not be the right engagement for you. And if you haven't got the choice, then like you say, you sort of, you sort of make a decision and say, well, I can narrow the scope of work to do this. I can, showcase my capabilities and potentially get more work out of that. But I think the larger the organisation it is, the harder it is to get that organisational will to act on all those other issues.
There's another framing there. You've got those 3 criteria. There's millions that might suit different organisations. One that I sort of use as a shorthand is, do they have enough awareness of the problem? Do they know the problem really exists? Do they not have the capability to solve it themselves? And can they afford to pay for it? I mean, okay, that's a thing, right? And pay for it isn't just money. It's, can they focus on it? Can they allocate time? Can people from their team turn up to our workshops and things? That's similar, but a different lens and looking for different outcomes. I think that's a really good problem. Like, are we solving the right problem? Can we even get to the right problem? And, the thing that I keep saying is doing the bad thing. I feel like it's not deceptive. It's just, you need to build trust before you can push.
Yeah.
Well, we're over time, and I don't mind that. I'm happy to get on a call and chat anytime. But I think thanks for coming. I've enjoyed it. I hope you had fun with the activity. Tell your friends, sign up to my things.
That sounds good. Mike, I've got a few people in my organisation that wouldn't mind sort of maybe coming to one of your courses and just doing a bit of talking and thinking. So I might sort of reach out to you individually about that and see if we can arrange something.
Great. Yeah, maybe tailor something. I'm happy to talk. I'm flexible. Yeah.
Cool.
I really
Thanks, guys.
enjoyed that, Mike. Thank you so much for tonight. I really thought it was a really good session, mate. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks, everyone.
well done. Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Good,
Thanks,
good
buddy.
session, Mike.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye.